What's up, Anchor Peeps? This is Anchor Pete here, and I am in my bedroom. I got David Lynch behind me and some books. And of course, downstairs in my dining room is my lovely wife, SHARI T. And
Hi
hi. Hello, good to see you. Today we are doing a special episode. SHARI and I, besides talking about Big Brother, we also talk about movies. We like to review, movies that have just come out and also some old classics too. SHARI heard about the Welcome to the Blumhouse event that was going on Amazon Prime this month, and she thought it'd be a good idea for us to talk about the movie Nocturne. For the Welcome to the Blumhouse event, ultimately there's going to be 8 films, but so far they've released 4. And out of those 4, SHARI thought that Nocturne would be the best fit for us. So today we're going to talk about Nocturne. We're going to talk about it a little bit without spoiling it, and then after a little discussion, we're going to go into spoilers. Okay? So I hope you guys are ready to talk about Nocturne. SHARI, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, nice. So you know me, I like to just talk a little bit about the behind the scenes for a couple of minutes. But SHARI, it's interesting. I've known about Blumhouse. They've been on my Twitter feed constantly, and the horror fans are always talking about Blumhouse. But are you aware of what movies they've put out?
I know some of the big names. I know Whiplash, which this movie kind of reminded me of. Whiplash, Get Out.
Yeah. So there's a ton.
That's what comes to mind.
Yeah. Yes. Whiplash and Get Out, 100%. Right. But the thing is, you already kind of, jumped ahead of me here, because I think that for Nocturne, a great pitch, like the elevator pitch for it, would be Whiplash meets Black Swan. What do you think?
I think it's a very good pitch, and I might throw in a little Devil Goes Down to Georgia.
Sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a Faustian element to this.
Yes, absolutely. So just to let you guys know, just people that watch at home that aren't huge horror fans, and SHARI too, Blumhouse put out Paranormal Activity, Insidious, Sinister, as you said, Get Out. They put out Split. The new version.
Oh, did they do The Purge?
They did The Purge. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
They did the new version of Halloween that came out like a year or two ago, and I really enjoyed that. They also made Black Klansman and The Invisible Man that just came out. That was actually the last movie that SHARI and I saw in the movie theater.
These are some of my favorite movies of the past 5 years.
Yeah. And they've actually put out even more than that too, but those are just some of the most noteworthy ones.
Okay.
So anyway, with this event, one thing that has been happening is there's been some negative talk about these movies, these Welcome to the Blumhouse movies. And one of the main critiques that people have been saying is that they're not scary, right? And it seems like they're focusing more on the drama side. On my other show that I do, on my other channel, the Lastercast channel, we were talking about how with The Haunting of Bly Manor, there's that same kind of criticism, right? And I think that in general, when people go to watch horror movies, they're expecting jump scares, and they're expecting gore, and they're expecting, murder, right? And that's just not this movie at all, right, SHARI?
Right. This is more of a psychological thriller. There's a lot of ambiguity that we can go into after we give this initial review. Yeah, it's not. There is some horrible things. It's definitely like an R rating. I wouldn't want my daughter to see some of these things, but it's mild.
Yeah. And so we talked about this a lot when we just did our review of the first 3 episodes of Bly Manor, but it's I think that people that are horror fans, especially when they get to this time of year, around Halloween, they're expecting so much. And I think they are going to get disappointed with a movie like this. But I have to say right off the bat, I actually enjoyed this movie quite a bit. What about you, SHARI?
Oh yeah, psychological horror is right in my wheelhouse. It's one of my favorite things, especially the kinds of things they touched on here: sibling rivalry and the horrible stuff that can occur with jealousy.
Yeah.
Things that you don't even need it to be a horror movie for it to be, awful and terribly stressful. So I really like the sibling rivalry factor they threw in, kind of a deal with the devil type thing. That made it more of a horror movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really liked it. There are flaws. If I was going to give it an overall review, I would probably give it a B.
Okay. What about on the Clemmy scale? If we're using the Clemmy scale, how many Clemmys? 5 is the best.
I'm sorry, what?
So, one is pretty bad, one is like the worst, and five is the best. So what would you give it?
I think I would give it 4.
Four Clemmys, wow. I think I would give it three altogether because I did think there were some flaws in it too, but I did enjoy it. And
What
so,
did you think? Can you say briefly what you think the flaws were? And this is for those of you who don't want spoilers, who just want to know if we thought this was a good movie before you go out and spend your time watching it.
yeah, sure. I mean, personally, I think there's at least two or three scenes that are just like wow, exposition dumps where like they're just sitting around and everyone is just telling people what they already know, right? Like, oh, well, this sister, she's the really talented one, and she's the one that has won this competition, and this sister, she's never gone anywhere. Like people, like, you have these characters, these two sisters, and you have the boyfriend of one of them, you have their parents, and they're having conversations where it's like everybody knows this. The only reason why you're saying it is because the audience needs to hear it. It's like if you and me were just sitting right now, like, in our dining room where you're sitting, and we're like, well, our one daughter goes to grade school and the other daughter, she stays at home most of the week with you. Like, we don't need to say that kind of stuff. Like, we get it, right? So that kind of stuff.
We reviewed a movie recently. I'm thinking of Ending Things by Charlie Kaufman, where he really makes you work to figure things out. In this movie, they didn't really want you to have to work very hard. They explain quite a bit, like you said, with exposition. However, there is a lot of ambiguity about other things. So
yeah,
maybe there's a balancing scale there.
So yeah, I agree. Like, unfortunately, the more ambiguous stuff was the stuff that was the most interesting. You know what I'm saying?
Ambiguity always is.
Right. Well, so just why did I give it a 3 too? Another reason is because I felt like some scenes were like you could just kind of, you knew they were coming from a mile away, and I felt like some scenes were kind of cheesy, like sort of melodramatic, the way that they were filmed. And when we get into spoilers, I can talk about the specific scenes. But what about you, Sherry?
Yeah.
What do you think were some flaws, or like what makes you from keeping it being a 5?
I agree with you. It's a little melodramatic. There's a little bit of stilted dialogue. There's a little bit of predictability. I forgive a lot of those things though, because for me, a thriller involving twins and involving like an elite school competition, involving a possible deal with the devil, all of those things I really love. So already the movie rates high for me just because it's about those things. Like, I just appreciate those topics and those tropes in a movie.
Yes.
And I'm sure we all do that a little. Like for you, for instance, if it was a Transformers movie, it could be like a terrible movie, but just because the subject matter, you would like that, right?
We've already had a couple of those to begin with, so yeah.
Right. Like, so for me, it just makes it infinitely more watchable because of what it's about. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to watch this movie. So if you like those sorts of things, you'll lean more towards liking this movie, I think. But like Pete said, don't look for jump scares and bloody god awful horror. All of those there's a little bit. It's more thought provoking than that. I think it's not, to me, that's a compliment.
Yeah. So let's talk about what is good about the movie, and I think that this can also show us a little bit of the behind the scenes. So the movie is directed by Zhu. So I don't know how to pronounce this person's name, so maybe you can help me. ZU is their first name, and then their last name is Quirke. So I would pronounce that Zhu Quirke, but who knows? How would you do that?
I don't know either.
So for Zhu Quirke, I have never heard of them before, and unfortunately I didn't have time to look them up on IMDb, but I'm assuming that they haven't done too many films. This is, I think, for beginning filmmakers, but I actually really appreciated, and I actually didn't even look up if it was a man or a woman. I was just gonna say their touch. I thought that this movie had some really interesting shots in it, right? There's a couple of things, a lot of it could be kind of mediocre, and you're like, okay, I've seen this 100 times. It's very bland. But then there were a couple of shots where things really stood out, especially when they synced it up with the music. You had a few some real memorable imagery, right? And so I appreciated that. And then the cast has an actress I really like, who's not actually the main actress. Her name is Madison Iseman, and she plays Vivian, one of the twins. And the reason why I like Madison so much is because she's been in a few things recently that I've really enjoyed. She's in those new Jumanji movies. She plays Bethany in the Jumanji movies, and I think she's great in those movies. And then she is also in Goosebumps 2, which I saw with Pepper, right? And I was like real happy to see her in that. And you know, I just think that she is a talented girl, and I was happy to see her in this. Her twin is played by Sydney Sweeney, and Sydney Sweeney has not been in a lot of things either, but you might recognize her, Shari, because she actually was in Sharp Objects, right, on HBO.
I did see that because I looked her up because I thought she was really good in this part, and she's the main character. She's on screen most of the time, and she carries most of the movie. And I did look her up. I don't remember her in Sharp Objects, so I'm thinking it must have been a bit part.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm assuming that she's probably one of like the teenage girls in the town that hung out with the main teenage girl, you know?
Yeah,
yeah. So those are the two main actresses in the movie, the two twins. Then we get a little small part by Julie Benz, who, you know, Shari, I'm sure you'll remember Julie Benz from Angel and Buffy, right? Darla,
and Dexter, right?
Right. And Dexter, yeah. And then otherwise, the other actors aren't as like noteworthy or whatever, but you know, I might have recognized them. I thought that the actor that played like this music teacher, this like kind of notorious music teacher, plays a guy named Henry Cask. His name is Ivan Shaw. Did you what'd you think of him? Like the main tutor?
The one that they're vying for his attention?
Yeah.
He was good. I actually think maybe he could have been better. I was fine with him. That was a fine performance. I feel the same way about the twin sister who you really like, who plays Vivian, I believe is her name. I thought she was fine, but also could have been better. I don't know. I thought they were okay. I think the lead actress is the star here.
Well, so let me ask you this. Does it come down to either acting or does it come down to the lines they're given and the direction they're given?
I guess there's a little bit of both.
Okay. Yeah, because for me, I felt like what was interesting about this guy, this main tutor, right, Henry Cask, is that he had some lines that were great that, you know, really touched upon the themes of the movie. And I thought they were like great lines that I'm going to like ponder and think about music, about people's appreciation for music. But then he has like real cliche lame lines too. So it's not like straight across the board great. There's like some lows and then there's some high notes for his dialogue. And then I felt like for Vivian, right, for Madison Iseman, she has some good lines dialogue as well, but then there's just a lot of like cheesy kind of, you know, like, oh, we're young sisters and I'm gonna be kind of competitive with you. Like her dialogue can be kind of cheesy too. So it goes back and forth. What do you think?
I think her acting was maybe the problem there. I think that if you have two teenage girls who are competitive, that is kind of the way they would talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, maybe it's just trying to make the most of what your character is.
Okay.
She was okay. I mean, I don't really want to like bash that actress or anything. I thought she was okay.
Okay.
But for me, the lead actress is really special because she didn't have very much dialogue. She plays this sort of mousy sister who's always in the shadows of her more talented, prettier, more exciting twin. And she doesn't say much the whole movie. So she has to convey a whole lot with her face and her eyes. And I think she was really great, really creepy. In fact, I think I disliked her quite a bit as a character. And I think you're probably supposed to. She's a little pathetic. She's annoying. She's frustrating.
Yeah.
She's, we'll just say, a little bit evil. So if I think she did a really good job with not, I mean, you're saying dialogue's an issue. She barely had it.
Yeah. Well, you know, at this point we could actually, I think, go into spoilers, right? And then I think we got to address some of this. Yeah. So
I feel like I'm taking a leash off myself. Yay.
Yeah. So there are people that watch these kind of shows and they don't watch the movie, but they'll listen to the review. And so like for them, I just want to give like a real brief summary of what happened. Basically, there are these two twins, and they are both exceptionally talented when it comes to music. And one is Juliet, the main character, and the other one is Vivian. They have nicknames for each other. One is V, and the other one is Juju. And they go to this school called Lindbergh, right? Is the name of the school, I believe. Lindbergh, and it's like an academy. It's for high school age students. And the twin that's the most successful, Vivian, is going to eventually go to Juilliard, whereas Juliet is not going to any kind of school after high school. She's going to take a year off and figure out what to do with her life. And you get the sense right away that this one sister is always in the shadow of her twin, and that she has potential herself, but no one sees it in her. Now, there's a student in the very beginning of the film that kills herself by throwing herself out a window or off a balcony. And she was like the star student at the school. And we learn more about her over the course of the film. And Juliet finds her book that she was using to write down her music notes, and like, you know, basically like her practice book, her source book for her practicing. And it has this weird kind of symbol on the cover that looks like a sun, and it has bizarre imagery throughout each page, which looks kind of like it's from like maybe like a religious text or something like that, where it has like just kind of witchcraft looking imagery in it on every other page. So over the course of the film, things happen to where the sister Juliet starts to kind of rise, whereas Vivian starts to fall. And it's all leading up to this main concert where the person that does the solo at the end is going to maybe go on to bigger and better things. And we just kind of follow Juliet's journey throughout this. And there's some creepy imagery throughout. But that's pretty much the summary of what happens without saying the exact end. What do you think?
Yes, without spoilers, yes.
Yeah. So my question now, going into spoilers with you, is with this kind of story, right? Do you think that it's fair that we have a character that is kind of like always in the shadows and kind of has gotten the bum rap in life? Do you think that it's fair that they are ultimately set up to become like evil and to fail or have horrible things happen to them?
Do I think it's fair?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of an interesting question, and I could really go into that actually, but I'll try to keep it brief. I can speak from experience. I have an older sister who is a year and a half older than me, and who was very popular in high school. Hi, Tanya, if you're watching. And I felt in her shadow quite a bit. For me, the trick was to go off on my own path and do my own thing. And we're actually pretty different. I'm much more introverted. She's much more extroverted. So just kind of going on our own paths. And it really never amounted to anything on a scale like in this movie of jealousy. But there was a little bit of that. And that's probably why this movie is kind of interesting to me, you know, to see someone with a problem that I once had. And of course, it's a movie, so they can blow it up and go all out, make it the most extreme horror. But I do think that, is it fair? Life isn't fair, right? I know that's that's a cliche, but it's true. And I think there are people who have to deal with situations like this. She could have, you know, obviously you're thinking, why, you're two twins. Why would you both take on piano? Why would you both compete? I mean, and why would you go on a path of the same exact pursuit? You know?
Yeah.
You go do something different. They don't really go into why it is. They actually say that the main character, Juliet, is the one who wanted to play piano when she was 5 years old. She's the one who loved it. The twin sister is put into the class with her, and the twin sister starts to excel, and she's obviously good. Otherwise, she wouldn't be at this elite academy as well. And the music teacher, what's the character's name?
The main one, his name is Cask is the last name. Henry Cask.
Yeah. Cask actually tells her, you're even better, you're more efficient than your sister, so how come she's the star and you're not? And it is ultimately about the attitude. The main character, Juliet's shy and meek and doesn't have self-confidence, whereas the other sister does, right?
Yeah.
And he gives that great line of she plays like the devil's at the door.
I love that line. See, that's an
I
example.
love that line too.
That's an example of how he has some really good lines of dialogue, but then he has some cheesy lines of dialogue. You know, he says to
Yeah.
Juliet, like, you know, she asks, like, you know, why is my sister so successful? Or he tells her why her sister's so successful. She plays like the devil's at her door. And then she follows that up with, well, what about the student Moira that killed herself? What was special about her? And then he's like, she played like the devil was in the room with her. Right? And I think that's great. That's an awesome line, you know? But yeah.
And it's also awesome on a double scale because you find out that Moira has had this notebook, and there is implication in this movie that there's some sort of pact with the devil to make your music, to be the star and to make your music the best it can be, but you give up your soul, right?
Yeah. Well,
that's not explicitly said, it's implied though.
Oh yeah, it's definitely implied. Yeah. Well, that's okay. That's kind of what I was getting at with my question. See, because like with horror in general, there's a sense that we are looking at a morality tale, right? A lot of times in horror movies, the reason why people have these gruesome ends or there's a bad end to their story, there's a tragedy, is because they are doing something wrong, right? They're being selfish. They're doing like one of the 7 deadly sins, right? They're being greedy. And to me, there was something
jealousy here.
Yeah. But with this movie in particular, I almost felt like the main character didn't deserve it. Like, I understand that, like, she does things towards the end of the film where it's like, okay, well, now you're getting full of yourself, or now you're being cold and cutthroat. But it's like, they do a very good job in the beginning part of the movie showing how, like, the other sister has always had it. The other sister has the boyfriend that loves her. You know, the other sister has this promising career. It just seems really unfair. And I don't know.
But it's not the more talented twins' fault either.
Right. I don't know. Something bothered me about the fact. So let's just go to the ending real quick so I can kind of explain why I'm getting at this. The ending is very ambiguous for this movie. The ending so what happens is Juliet is the one that gets into the solo. She can play the solo in the final piece of the concert. She goes to sit down at the piano in front of the orchestra and in front of this big audience. When she does, she freaks out and she walks out. She follows these lights, which have been throughout the whole movie, these lights flashing. She follows them up to the roof, and she is going to step off the roof and fall. Now, it cuts back between her going to step off the roof and her as if she had played the concert and was a big hit. And then it cuts from that to like a big bright light, and then she's on top of like a statue that was placed in front of the concert hall, and she's like, this is definitely the most disturbing shot in the whole movie, by the way, too. It's like a tight close-up on her face, and she's all bloodied, and her face is like blue, right? And so it's ambiguous as to what really happened. Did she jump and kill herself and she imagined her being successful, or was she successful and she didn't jump? And I'm sorry for going off on this for a little bit, but the reason why it's ambiguous is because she's just laying there dead, and the camera pans back, and it just keeps going back, and it just shows people walking by as if no one notices her, like dead on this statue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I took it as one of two things. And sure, I really want to hear your interpretation of this. I took it as she had to like sacrifice her old self for her to be successful, or she died and she was just having a delusion about being successful, you know? So what was your take of the ending?
I felt the same way. It's either or. I think it's how you want to interpret it. For me, I haven't settled on which ending I want. I don't feel like I have to. I feel like either of those makes sense. The only question I would have is why, if she actually jumped, why would everybody be walking around ignoring a dead body laying there, right?
Right. And so go ahead.
So for me, I guess I'm leaning more towards she got what she wanted. She made this deal with the devil. But oh no, wait, no, I'm not, because I just remembered the thing that she was supposed to sacrifice was a soul, right? And I think she had come to her own conclusion in this frenzied drawing she did that she was supposed to sacrifice her own sister's soul.
Yeah.
And that never happens. So I don't know if she did have to kill herself to give something up.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point, right? It's very ambiguous because you're absolutely right. There's a picture that she draws on her own in that book, and it shows like her sister stepping off a cliff. It says V sacrifice. And so, you know, it looks like she sacrifices herself. Now, the ending, if we took it like she sacrificed herself, whether it's like her soul or she died herself, I think the ending, what they're trying to get across with all the people just walking around and not paying attention to her, is that there are so many musicians that are not successful, and even the ones that are successful, that just sacrifice their lives for their music, for their passion. And no one around them, no one in the regular world notices that they've just given away their whole lives for everything.
Right. And they have that small conversation in the restaurant where the mom says of all the music that's downloaded nowadays, like 1% is classical music.
Exactly.
Even their parents kind of think what they're doing is a bit of a waste of time. I think that's kind of interesting in this movie too, how disheartening if you're their daughters, you know, to hear your parents talk that way.
Yeah. So that scene in the restaurant and the scene where Juliet is confronting her original music teacher or music coach have some great bits of dialogue, and they're among this, like, you know, sea of cheesy dialogue. And so both scenes kind of harp on the same point, which is that, like, when she's talking to her original music teacher, she's saying how, like, I've given everything to music. I am a virgin, you know. She says this thing about how they throw statistics in this movie like twice, you know, like the average age that people lose their virginity is 17, and I am like past average now. I'm a freak, right? I've never been kissed before, and you know, I don't have a place. She says, like, I never had a PlayStation, which I thought was kind of a funny line. And then she's basically saying how, like, she's given up her music given up her life just for music, right? And then that great line that you just said about how much classical music is downloaded, you know, it just shows that, like, people are putting hours and hours of their life into something that no one really appreciates. And I think that is kind of the heart of the movie right there. Like, people sacrificing themselves for music, and yet it doesn't matter to everyone around them. You know, it's like they're willing to give everything up for it, their own souls, but in general, it's overlooked, you know?
Yeah. And you're saying that's why people are walking around. There's some sort of commentary there. There's people walking around her dead body, not even noticing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. I hadn't thought about it that way. I was thinking of it more as that she had been a person who was ignored most of her life, and her sister's shadow, and that this was just more of that continuing.
I agree. That's a very good point. I just feel like if it was more of that than what I just said, I feel like then maybe we would see, like, the sister on the stage at the very end, or like the sister would walk out and people would address the sister. You know what I'm saying? But maybe not. I don't know. I like that too. I don't know. It's just, it's good. Like, I was worried going in to watch this movie that it was going to be kind of lame because I'd seen some bad reviews. It got like 59% of Rotten Tomatoes. So I thought that it might not be that good, but I enjoyed it. And the fact that we're having this discussion right now about it, I think that it shows some merit. I think that it's worthy of discussion.
Yeah, I think it's way too thought-provoking a film and touched on too many interesting themes to be 59%.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I don't know maybe they too wanted more horror or something, more gruesome or shock scares or something, but yeah.
I basically want to talk.
It's more thriller. If you accept it's more thriller, you'll be much happier.
Exactly.
With your expectations.
Psychological thriller, yeah. Sherry, I basically wanted to talk about like two things real quick, and then please, if you want to add some more stuff too. But before we wrap this up, there was like two other points I wanted to really bring up, which was I do think that we should talk about like the melodramatic part of it and the cheesy dialogue, because I think that really does kind of ruin the movie a bit. You know, it kind of lowers my score. Like basically things that you could expect in the movie that are like cliche. So this great tutor that she has that has these lines of dialogue, turns out like he was having an affair with the sister. And like once I kind of figured that out, I kind of rolled my eyes. It's like, okay, great. You know, the guy's having an affair. Like that's original. You know, what you think of that about that?
I thought it was okay because it helped play into how the sister just has everything that the girl doesn't. And the main character, it gives her motivation to want that teacher. Okay. Not just because he's considered like the best teacher at the school, but also because her sister has him. Mm-hmm. Not just as a teacher, but he's in love with the sister. So I was okay with it.
Yeah. There's this one sequence where the teacher goes out to dinner with the twins' parents and the twins, and then the one sister knocks over a cake into the guy's lap. The accomplished sister knocks over a cake into his lap and then spills champagne on him. I was like, all right, that's a little too much. And then she storms.
Well, that was a dead giveaway that something's going on.
Yeah. And then the parents go to take her home, and then the parents are kind of drunk too. So he offers to take Juliet home to her school. And I guess on the way he stops at his house and he like pours her some like scotch. And I was like, oh, that's just too much for me. I was like, this is like over the top. And what I liked about that sequence though is that they show this conductor's baton that he has, or wand. I think it's baton though. And it's on a shelf. It's an award that he won for this great performance. And she picks it up and it looks sharp. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a horror movie. So maybe she's going to like stick it in his eye. Maybe she's going to stick it in his neck. And I think in a lesser movie, that's what would have happened there. But they get into an argument and she throws the baton into his fireplace. And so I liked that. What do you think of that part?
I liked that too. And it reminds me to talk about the notebook itself that is giving her the power. Because there's never a devil shown in this movie. In fact, you could even argue that all of this is in her head and that she's mentally unstable. She is taking pills for anxiety, which actually that made me roll my eyes because that is sort of a trope, like, oh, maybe they're just mentally ill, like the pills thing kind of got on my nerves.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so they show that she has this music book that she got from the student who had killed herself in the beginning of the movie. And I thought the imagery in the music book was really cool. And I'm kind of like, it made me wonder who the artist is who came up with that. It has like creepy backwards handwriting. I loved all that. So those little details to me elevate this movie. I don't think a lesser movie would have even bothered with such like intricate drawings. There's 5 different pages that have different instructions on what has to happen to help further her in her quest for greatness.
Yep.
And sacrifice is one of them. There's some sort of copulation thing. What are the other ones? Do you remember?
So you said copulation, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, there's a sex one. Was copulation not the word?
Oh, you're like talking about like the literal words written in the book. Yeah. Maybe copulation was the word. Yeah. Basically, it's like she has to have sex. Like a male figure basically has to like be burned or like burned on fire. And then she draws like her sister stepping off the cliff. There's another one where it's like, this is the most like kind of satanic looking one, but there's kind of like a goat man and something's happening to him to where he's being like hurt or something like that. And that represents her original teacher.
Because like, she got suspended.
She got him suspended because of like he slaps her in the face because she talks to him a certain way. But,
right. So each of the pages, there's like a set of music that goes with it. And it seems to me that if you picked up this book and looked at it and started to play the music within it, you were kind of making the deal with the devil.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no actual like her talking to a devil. There's no devil figure or anything. It's just kind of that's why I'm saying this could be in her mind. She could be just imagining all this. It's again the ambiguity. The movie leaves it up to that. However, I do think there's a supernatural element here. But it maybe not.
Yeah. So I'm super glad that you brought that up because I said there was 2 points. That is the second point that I was going to talk about. I really love that book. I really love the imagery. And I was going to kind of talk about the ambiguity too. So basically, thank you for talking about exactly what I thought we should talk about. That's awesome. With that book, and this kind of ties into the imagery in general, and why I think that Quirke, hopefully I'm pronouncing her name right, did a really great job, is there throughout the movie, there's like light that appears every so often, and it appears on her face. She glows. And then there's like little, like it's almost like stars in the sky. It looks like the sun sometimes, but it is this sort of supernatural, not normal light. And it appears in her book too. Like in these drawings, little parts of the drawings will start to glow. And probably my favorite shot in the whole movie is at the very end, or not the very end, but like almost the end. Her sister V falls off a cliff at night, and she's at a party when this happens, and she needs to get away from the party because the cops are going to come, paramedics are going to come, and she's running, and that light just grows and grows and grows till it's like a gigantic sun behind her. And that was like my favorite shot in the whole movie. So basically what happens is she has this one piece, V has this one piece that she's going to use to audition for the solo. And Juliet's original teacher is recommending that she goes with a piece by Mozart to audition. And she doesn't think that it's going to impress the judges as much. So she ends up playing the exact same piece that her sister plays right after her sister plays it. And so to me, that would kind of lean her more towards the unlikable side, like what you were talking about, because she's basically like trying to play the same piece as her sister. And
yeah, come on, there's so many things she could have played.
Yeah, so she ends up winning. She ends up getting the part because her sister falls off this cliff and breaks her arm. And so when she gets the part, that's when she begins working exclusively with that teacher. And so, like, what did you think about him and their interaction between the two of them?
I wondered if I kind of thought that maybe he might go in a direction where he was kind of the devil or something, because he says some things to her before the sister falls off the cliff that I feel like could be interpreted as encouraging her to do something to her sister. He says, do you remember what he says exactly to her?
He says something.
It's okay. I mean, I can't quote it, but he kind of encourages her to maybe do something about the sister standing in her way.
Right.
And then one of the next scenes is the party, and the sister falls off the cliff, which Juliet does not push her sister off the cliff, but she does know there's a cliff and does not call out to warn her sister. So she does indirectly have something to do with the fall that breaks the sister's arm. And later, they're all in the principal's office, and they tell Juliet, congratulations, you're going to get the part because your sister can't play it with a broken arm. And that same teacher notices dirt on her shoes and comments on it, saying, you forgot a little bit, as if he knows that she had something to do with it. Yeah. Later in the film, we find out he's been sleeping with the sister and is mad that she's breaking things off. So apparently he's not, a supernatural. I mean, he's definitely not a supernatural element in this movie, and he doesn't seem to have anything to do with the devilish handbook that she's been using. But yeah, he is sort of an instigator. And that's where I feel like there's a little Whiplash here. He's kind of this, like the teacher in Whiplash who, like, really drives the students to a point of madness, and where he himself is evil in a way because what he does to them psychologically.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. I think that when I said before that it's Whiplash meets Black Swan, I truly think that someone that pitched this movie said that sentence. I really think, like, this is Whiplash meets Black Swan. And it's Whiplash with him as the teacher, just not as intense, and the dialogue's not as good. And then it is Black Swan with the ending, because it's the main performance, and the character's basically having like a mental breakdown. So, those are two great movies to want to emulate. And I really love both of those movies. So that's probably why I appreciated this movie as much as I did.
Yeah, and before we wrap things up, can I throw in two other movies that I think if you enjoyed this movie, you might also like?
100%, yes.
So if you enjoy like kind of a sibling rivalry with a horror spin, I think Ginger Snaps is kind of that sort of thing, with two sisters and one's in the shadows. And also the movie Raw, which I can't recommend more highly, which Pete will not watch because he's too afraid of how gross it's going to be. And it is gross, but it's really good. And there's a lot of sibling sister rivalry, and it's also a horror film.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend Raw if you like this kind of thing. And then, oh crud, I forgot the other thing I was going to say. Oh, it reminded me in tone of Neon Demon, which is like some of the kind of synthy music and some of the shots.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you see it at all?
I do.
Also, the idea of be careful what you wish for, that sort of morality tale, because in Neon Demon also she wants to be the successful model, and it's like, look what happens when you get what you want,
Yeah. Yeah, those are great examples. And I mean, I haven't seen Raw, but I did love Neon Demon a lot. So, you know, this movie is in some pretty, like in our regards, pretty quality company, right? Whiplash,
Yes, and
Neon Demon, you know, Black Swan. Yeah.
I think it's just as good as Neon Demon, because Neon Demon is also a flawed movie, but Neon Demon has things that it is way better in, and like has different parts. You know, I'd say it's along the scale of a Neon Demon movie, like where it's not a perfect movie and it's flawed, but it's too interesting to ignore, I think.
Yeah. Maybe this movie would be better if like someone vomited up an eyeball and then like ate it again.
There is like eye issues, as you can see from the cover of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So this movie, Nocturne, is my 6th movie that I'm reviewing for our 31 days of Halloween on the Lasercast channel, right? And so we're on October 17th right now as we're recording this. I can't believe we've actually freaking put out 17 of these videos this month so far. And so there's still 14 more to go. So as we count down to Halloween, I want you to keep checking back with the Anchor Pete channel, and also check the Lasercast channel, because we just have a lot of horror content coming out. And I think that the next review that I personally do is going to have a horror aspect to it too. And it's going to connect to one of my favorite horror movies, which is Event Horizon. So that's the next one I'm going to cover after Nocturne. But Shari, as always, thank you so much for talking with me. And, you know, if people want to see you and me together again, they can check our channel out on Monday, as we will have our next Big Brother review. All right?
That's right.
Okay. So I guess I will come downstairs and see you, but for everyone else, we will see you guys on Monday.